We all know the story of the actor who played both a Marvel and DC character. The first time was an absolute shambles, but when they jumped over to the other superhero film universe, they got praised for their performance, even if sometimes the movies they were in were critically ridiculed. No, not you, Ryan. I'm talking about that guy from the town.
Making moves, reindeer games.
Everyone and their mums are hyped for Daredevil Born Again. Charlie Cox has cemented himself as the definitive version of the character, but I have a lot of nostalgia for the 2003 Ben Affleck Daredevil, as it sits amongst that really formative time for my love of these characters and their film adaptations. Before the MCU era, it was all about the Blade, the X-Men, the Spider-Man, the Hulk, and the Daredevil, baby. After I did that Hulk video a couple of weeks ago and rewatched the Ang Lee adaptation for the first time in years, I was astounded at just how good it was. It was even better than I remembered. But I see the sentiment often that if you praise something that was critically maligned, you're probably just, quote-unquote, blinded by nostalgia. I see this argument for the 2000s Fantastic Four movies all the time, but I'm really glad that I rewatched 2003's Daredevil, because it allowed me to cement the fact that no, I'm more than willing to put nostalgia aside and try to be unbiased about these comic book movies from yesteryear. Because Daredevil 2003 is way worse than I remember. It made me sad to go back to a childhood nostalgia pleasure centre and see all the flaws laid bare. This is really not a good movie, or a very good adaptation of Daredevil. Probably the worst Daredevil adaptation of all time. I may not think the Fantastic Four movies are misunderstood masterpieces or anything hyperbolic like that, but I think they mostly get the characters down pat, they're funny, and they fly by when watching them. They're not perfect by any means, and I do have nostalgia for them, granted, but there's legitimately good points in there amongst the mediocrity. Daredevil 03 has very few features that I could call redeeming. There's clearly some passion in there somewhere, and I think there's definitely affection for the source material, but it all comes together in the most haphazard, unappealing way that hasn't aged well at all, nor is it worthy of critical reappraisal.
I said knock knock, let the devil in, alien, phone home.
Am I being too harsh on DD03? Let me know in the comments below, and please subscribe for more Marvel videos. The first full-fat podcast on Daredevil Born Again episodes 1 and 2 is now out, so please head on over to the link in the pinned comment if you want to know my thoughts. Let's get some praise out the way. It's a 2000s comic book movie, so the visuals are pretty good. This definitely feels post-Matrix, particularly when the characters are hopping across shadowy rooftops and fighting in subways.
Dodge this.
There's some great uses of shadow, and it's shot on film, so it has that lovely texture to it that is basically lost now. There's also some great comic book panel recreations, like seeing Daredevil clutching the cross, or even the minute detail of Elektra's sigh failing to pierce her costume. In general, the focus on comic book creatives woven throughout the movie is nice. Several creators get cameos, and others are referenced by name.
Miller, Mack, Bendis.
What with director Mark Steven Johnson's desire to cram as much of the classic Daredevil mythos as possible, you can see that there's a lot of love for the source material, even if it ends up becoming overstuffed. This movie isn't embarrassed to be a Daredevil movie, and putting the creatives behind the comics in the spotlight is something we rarely see in big budget adaptations, so it's a nice touch.
It's better be good, Kirby.
You know me, Eric. It's always good.
The other thing I really like, the costume. Cox's Daredevil look is good, no doubt, but it's taken a while to ditch most of the black, and I still think it's weird he has no logo. This 2003 fit might be all leather, as was the style at the time, but it cuts a seriously comic book accurate shape. It looks really good under those moody lights, and I buy it as a protective and acrobatic costume for this variant of the character. I love the ninja mask that wraps at the back of his head, the reflective eyes, and of course, the logo. For 2003, this easily could have been all black leather with no horns, so I'm thankful they faithfully translated the look of the character, as well as his crazy powers, if nothing else. There is unfortunately something so off about Affleck as Daredevil. I think this might be one of his worst performances next to Jiggly, making 2003 an insane year for him.
Good.
I think you can tell that he's struggling to engage with the material on offer. He's undeniably a good actor in plenty of movies, but it feels like he's phoning in so much of this. Not that I blame him, when he's saddled with dialogue that doesn't exactly sing, and a love story that feels rushed and saccharine. The voiceover narration in the movie, in particular, is the low point.
They say your whole life flashes before your eyes when you die. And it's true.
It gives me hardcore Harrison Ford theatrical cut Blade Runner vibes.
I don't know why he saved my life.
The best Matt Murdock stuff in the whole movie is the origin portion. It's fairly lean, encapsulates the comic book origin story into an easily digestible film format, and has the most concise plotting of the whole thing. It's hard not to get pulled into Matt's plight when his father is murdered, or when he loses his sight. This section of the movie is also unintentionally hilarious with its edginess, like seeing Matt take on some bullies. Of course AJ Soprano gets beaten up by a blind kid. This is actually insanely on brand.
How about the fact that I hate my son?
Jennifer Garner is fine as Elektra, but it is both incredibly ironic that both her and Ben were cheating on their partners and falling in love on the set, whilst the end product has a completely bland and uninspired romance. Another odd parallel with Ryan Reynolds and Green Lantern. They basically fall in love immediately, and there's cringe-inducing moments like Matt immediately taking her to his fuckboy hotspot. Who can forget the terrible playground battle too? The romance moves way too fast, and maybe it's just me, but I never bought it. It gets somewhat more interesting when Matt is framed for the murder of Elektra's father, but as soon as they fight and she unmasks him, she instantly drops her vengeance crusade and believes him. I would have thought she'd at least contemplate that she was being played, since she was so convicted in getting Daredevil for the murder seconds beforehand, but hey ho. We gotta keep this plot moving. The legacy of this character is 100% the iconic training montage. Save me! Jon Favreau plays Foggy Nelson, a character that is mishandled as he has no moral compass whatsoever, consistently trying to get Matt to work with scrupulous villains in order for their firm to make money.
Yeah, it's fantastic. He paid in fluke. Fluke is a fish, Matt. Did you know that? Because I sure as hell didn't.
The character survives through Favreau's charm alone, and the lasting legacy of this is not the role, but the ironic attachments that would later come with it. This Foggy Nelson face would meet the next Daredevil in Spider-Man No Way Home as Happy Hogan, and appear in the same movie as Elektra when she made her return 19 years after her last appearance. He of course is one of the forebears of the MCU for directing Iron Man, so in retrospect, having him here feels like a key cornerstone of Marvel lore on film. Oh, and Karen Page shows up, but you'd barely notice her presence in the theatrical cut. Michael Clarke Duncan was always goated as the Kingpin. The late great actor had the perfect stature and presence to be Wilson Fisk, and this casting still holds up tremendously well. What surprised me rewatching this after all these years is just how little he actually shows up. He doesn't have many interactions with Daredevil, but you don't even really get to see the inner workings of his operations, or how he got there, or what he truly wants. This variant of the Kingpin is completely lacking any of the nuance or depth of the D'Onofrio version, but the problem lies in the script and not the casting. The best scene with him is when hero and villain finally throw down in the third act. You get a great sense of his strength as he just throws Daredevil around effortlessly. Plus that double knee break still gets me to this day. Ooh. Michael Clarke Duncan always expressed a desire to take on Tobey Maguire, and I think he would have been an ideal foe for the Wallcrawler, but it was unfortunately about a decade before we all started crossing everything over. Amazingly, this wasn't his only stint as the character, as he voiced Kingpin in 2 episodes of the 2003 Spider-Man animated series. If he was still with us today, he would have for sure been a top contender for a multiverse saga reprisal. May he rest in peace. The standout has gotta be Colin Farrel as
Bullseye.
Colin Farrell is firing on all cylinders here, just absolutely obliterating the scenery by chowing down on it like it's an all-you-can-eat buffet. Everything about this schlock villain feels out of place with the darker elements of the movie, but fuck it, he makes this movie way more fun than it would have been otherwise. I still feel bad for that poor grandma.
More peanuts? Please.
He's actually pretty menacing as well, set up adequately as a real test for both Daredevil and Elektra. He's a really nasty character that doesn't have much depth, but makes up for it with sheer entertainment value. He's a perfect heavy for the movie. It's funny that both Affleck and Farrell would go on to play iconic Gothamites in the Batman and Penguin, and would both get sizable acclaim for nailing those characters. I really remember the action being better, and that was something that really killed me here. There's some cool moments for sure, like the finesse of seeing Daredevil kick this goon's bottle into the light. They got Matt's speed and agility down really nicely, but some of the choreo is cut up too much in the edit, and some of it is a little too incoherent for my liking. One thing I do enjoy is how, much like Snyder's Watchmen, all these regular human superheroes do superhuman feats like spinning jumps that they could never perform and throws that just seem insane. If all the superheroes in the movie are doing it, then it kind of becomes the rule and I can dig it. Another thing bringing down the action is the horrendous CGI inserts. Yeah, Daredevil really climbed on top of Bullseye's bike and kicked him off of it. Seamless. This is such a 2003 thing. It's the exact same vibe as this shot from The Matrix Reloaded, but that movie can probably get away with it more because the rest of the fight is top notch. Daredevil really doesn't have that. The best action scene is when he fights all those goons at the start and then his showdown with Kingpin at the end. That guy's The Rock's cousin, by the way. Bullseye gets some gnarly moments too, in particular when he throws back Elektra's sigh. It still kind of kills me how she's standing there badass, making you think she's going to catch it, and then she just doesn't. The Bullseye one-on-one has more CGI bullshit that prevents it from really delivering. Bats, man. It's really entertaining seeing Bullseye wet his pants with excitement at collecting all the glass to kill Matt with, but then it becomes a poor man's version of the scene in Spider-Man. Matt just keeps on backflipping the same way and all the pieces keep missing him, huh?
Show mercy.
That's fucking hilarious. Bonus points for getting thrown out the window too. The movie doesn't particularly excel as brainless action, nor as a love story or a character drama, but its biggest crime is just how thematically muddled it all is. There's a through line regarding Matt's morality as he wrestles with whether or not he's the bad guy.
I'm not the bad guy, kid.
This culminates in him choosing to spare Kingpin's life. Well, that's great and all, but at the start of the movie, he's taking great delight in watching Quesada beg for his life as he murders him by throwing him onto rail tracks.
That light? At the end of the tunnel? That's not heaven. I'm killing you! I'm killing you! That's the C train!
He seems to not only seek out retribution on criminals, he appears to actively enjoy torturing them and ending their lives. It doesn't quite work for him to have a change of heart for the guy who's running the entire city and is responsible for all the problems and crimes we see, not to mention the death of Jack Murdock. He also refuses to spare Bullseye, who literally begs him for mercy, and it's only through sheer luck that he survives a fall that, for all intents and purposes, meant to kill him.
Bullseye.
Any juicy themes of religion or forgiveness are skin deep, and the movie can't come close to replicating the deeper mythos of the comics, try as hard as it might to recreate its panels. I've heard for years that the movie was much improved by the director's cut, but after rewatching the theatrical and then the director's, I think I can safely say it's worse. Yeah, it fleshes some things out a little bit more, and adds a bit more layering with the Coolio subplot. Not something I thought I'd say, but a movie with a bad plot and bad dialogue isn't going to be saved by being any longer to sit through. I don't think any of the reordering in the second act, or the presence of the courtroom stuff, really enhances the movie. What it desperately needed was more character work with Fisk, a better realised love story, and more of a hero-villain dynamic. At an extra 30 minutes, it's a sizable difference, but I think some of the scenes just reek of being extended for the sake of it, like that random moment when Matt starts referencing Fight Club.
I'm in the Fight Club, and it's the first rule of Fight Club, don't talk about Fight Club, so you're not in the Fight Club, you're out of it.
I think given the choice, I'd rather watch a bad movie for 1 hour 45 than 2 hours 15. Been talking a lot about post-credits on the channel recently, so it's worth pointing out that DD03 has one, and it's actually a bit of a stonker. Our guy Bullseye is alive and still pulling off some insane trick shots. Brilliant. They pull an Incredible Hulk in the director's cut and put this in the pre-credits ending instead.
Bullseye.
The legacy of the 2003 Daredevil world is a funny one. It got a sequel of sorts in 2005's Elektra, which was somehow even worse. That one majorly sucked as a kid. I'm not putting myself through a rewatch of that. Bizarrely, they filmed a cameo from Affleck's Daredevil appearing in a dream sequence.
Come back, Elektra.
When I'm ready.
But it was cut for unknown reasons. To date, Daredevil never returned on screen, yet Elektra has now come back a whopping 3 times. She of course made a big comeback in last year's Deadpool and Wolverine, where even the Merc with the Mouth made light of the fact that this iteration of the character isn't exactly a fan favourite.
So, just to refresh, you are Wonder...
Elektra.
Elektra, yes, who could forget?
Props to Jennifer Garner for coming back though, even if it's a shame her ex-husband declined to join the party. Instead of a Daredevil cameo, we find out that he was killed by Cassandra Nova.
The Daredevil.
Daredevil, I'm so sorry.
It's fine.
So that's finally one thing this universe and the 2000s Fantastic Four have in common. Horrible, sad ends at the hands of Xavier's sister. At least we got to see Johnny on screen.
While gargling juggernauts, juggernauts.
I think much like Eric Bana's Hulk, the chances of this 2003 hero coming back, even for Secret Wars, is rather low, but we have Charlie Cox's Daredevil now, and I think getting the tip of the hat via Elektra and Deadpool was probably enough. Still, this movie is certainly a reminder that nostalgia doesn't blind us to everything. What do you think of Daredevil 2003? Some redeeming qualities? Anything you think it actually does better than the Cox version? Let me know in the comments below, and be sure to head on over to the video podcast for a bumper edition review of Daredevil Born Again. A huge thank you to Dr. Chike and Peter Vaughan for being my full fat patrons. Your contribution to keeping the channel running is immeasurable. If you'd like to join the Patreon for exclusive goodies, early releases of main videos, the podcast, video scripts, and a thank you in the credits, then please head on over to patreon.com/fullfatvideos to choose one of the paid tiers.